This is an episode about relationships. We're going to go off-road a little bit, but it's all related to leadership because we're not going to be talking about business transformation, reshaping cultures, organizational effectiveness, or leading teams. Today, we're going to be taking a look at another dimension of our leadership lives called our personal relationships. Because believe it or not, when we walk into the workplace, we don't leave our personal lives at the door. We bring our whole self. We bring the conflicts that we had last night with our spouse or partner. We feel the anxieties and the tensions around relational aspects of our lives. And despite our best efforts, we frequently bring those emotions right into our jobs. Now, I'm not a therapist, as you all know, but that's where Shawn McBride comes in. Shawn is a couples therapist, and he runs a practice called the Couples Counseling Center based in Maryland that also serves Washington, D.C. and Northern Virginia. He actually works with clients from around the world. I first learned of Shawn on Simon Sinek's podcast called A Bit of Optimism, and I found his discussion with Simon most fascinating. Plus, he had a lot of great ideas and real practical tools to help us all do a better job of building healthier relationships. Shawn is a licensed clinical professional counselor and has a master's degree in counseling and has written more than 20 books on the topic of relationships, couples, rebuilding trust, communications, working through conflict. He has helped thousands of couples over his 30 years as a counselor, and he's a former pastor and has officiated, he's quite proud to say, over 300 weddings. So even if you're not in a romantic relationship, I think you're going to learn a lot from this discussion, so stay tuned. This is the Leader to Leader podcast sponsored by the StarQuest Group. I'm your host, Tom Athenour. Let's join in on my conversation with Shawn McBride. So Shawn, welcome.
Glad to be here, Tom. Thank you for having me on your podcast today.
Yes, and you are wearing a Dallas Cowboys hat, which, that's some loyalty there. So what's the story behind that?
Most people who see the hat say, how can you be a therapist and be crazy to follow the Dallas Cowboys? I've been a fan since I was a little boy. I grew up right in outside of Washington, D.C., and back in the late 70s, early 80s, it was a rivalry between the Cowboys and the Indians. And I used to play Cowboys and Indians with my friends, always landed on the Cowboy side. And it's just something that I've been committed to since I was a little boy. It's been painful for the last 30 years, but I'm committed.
You are committed, man. That
It's
loyalty runs deep.
It's a love-hate relationship.
Well, as I mentioned to you in our prep, we work with leaders from all walks of life, Shawn. And
Yes.
when we actually get them together as cohorts or even with our executive coaching work, we really start to open up. They open up about what's really going on from a personal perspective. And so we've always had this belief that the whole person shows up at work, and the old adage of leaving your personal life at the door is just not realistic. And so I learned about you through Simon Sinek's A Bit of Optimism, and I watched some of your videos and have become a fan. And I just love your very pragmatic approach to helping couples, whether dating, engaged, married, work more effectively with their relationships. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today as we launch into this topic.
Excellent.
That we don't typically include on this series. So thanks for,
yes.
I'm so glad you said yes.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. So you've been in this business a long time. I shared a little bit about your background in the introduction, but share a little bit more. How did you get into this business? A little bit about your story, if you don't mind.
Well, it's interesting. If you saw my childhood, Tom, and all of the conflict that I saw from my own parents, it's interesting. I was always the mediator. I was always trying to break up their fights. I was always calling the police because it was a very toxic, scary, um, emotionally unstable environment. So that was really my first introduction to helping couples. Me as a little boy, desiring peace and security. I didn't know those words back then, but always trying to help my parents resolve those issues. Fast forward, I became an adult and I've been married to the same woman for 31 years, and we started to have conflict in our own marriage, in our own relationship very early on. The first 5 years were very, very tough. And we started to go to counseling. We started to do therapy as couples as well as individually. And I just fell in love with the process to learn skills, to get tools, to be able to fix what was broken in the relationship. Just helped me. It helped my wife so much. And because we did the work, and in doing the work that we learned from our therapists and counselors, our relationship started to transform. And then, people started to come to us. Hey, we can't communicate well. We can't resolve conflict well. Y'all have been married for 5 years, 7 years. Can you help us? And so that was our trajectory. And I ended up going to school and getting a master's in counseling. Ended up years later getting licensed professionally. And so now I got this really big title of a clinical therapist, professional counselor. I just love serving couples. I love helping couples navigate their relationships. And Tom, I have couples all over the world, literally from all walks of life. But I value what you do. And while we're having this conversation about leadership, because you're right, so many leaders are great at their jobs. They're charismatic. They're building companies, building businesses, but they're suffering in their relationship. And I believe, just through my clients who are in leadership, boy, if you can have peace in your relationship, if you can get along with your partner more than not get along with your partner, it leads to so much more success.
I couldn't agree with you more on that front. And we see it all the time, and it shows up. Just doesn't stay at the door. It shows up in how they show up at work because it's a direct connection as to what's
Yes,
going on at home. You are also an ordained pastor.
I
Were?
am.
Is that true?
Yeah, I'm an
I
ordained minister. I'm not currently pastoring. My last church, I transitioned a couple of years ago. But yeah, so I've served in pastoral ministry for many, many years. My wife tells me I'm still pastoring. It just looks a lot different as a therapist. I'm pastoring from the couch and not the pulpit.
That's great. Well, in some of your videos that I've watched, I can tell you have some
Yeah.
pastoring and preaching in your
Yes.
background. Yeah,
Yes.
so awesome. So tell me a bit about some of the things that show up the most in the counseling work that you're doing, and have you seen shifts in what's showing up today that maybe wasn't showing up before? Because you've been doing this a long time, right?
Long,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, what are
yeah.
you seeing?
What I see, Tom, from my purview, the number one issue that couples come to me about is, Shawn, we cannot communicate well. It's the number one issue. I don't care who I'm meeting with, we don't know how to communicate. And the second thing I deal with is, Shawn, we can't resolve conflict. We don't communicate well, we don't resolve conflict well. And if I would relate this to leadership, to be a leader, you have to be competent. And there are many leaders, Tom, who are competent in leadership. They're competent in their business. They're competent in their work, but they lack competency in their relationship, whether they're in a dating relationship, whether they're engaged to be married, or whether they're married. And so, what I try to do is create competent couples. I believe very strongly that if a couple can learn some very basic communication skills, if a couple can learn some very basic conflict resolution strategies, just think about it, Tom. Leaders are doing this in their profession, but they're not doing it privately in their relationship. How many leaders are resolving conflict with their teams, with their employees, with their staff? And so I think while they're at it, it's good to learn a skill set. Boy, how can we do better in communicating and resolving conflict in our relationship? Because, Tom, I think conflict for any couple is growth trying to happen. Okay, most couples are not Israel and Iran. Most couples are not Russia and Ukraine, although they're acting like it, right? And so
Yeah.
they need to learn some competency in order to be able to resolve the conflict that's going on and in order to better communicate.
So you talk about, I'm going to go back to communication. I want to unpack that a
Yes,
bit more.
yes,
Talked about conflict, and even in our prep, you were talking about infidelity too, is a big thing that's
yes,
showing up. Okay. So let's go back into this communication thing because what is it? You've got practical ways to approach this. You've worked with
yes,
thousands of couples over the
yes.
years. What are the most fundamental aspects of communication that have to be embedded in that relation where you have to have
Yeah,
confidence?
yeah. Couples really want to connect, Tom. They just don't know how. Couples really want peace. They really want to get along. They just don't know how. And so, some of the most basic things and practical things I try to help couples with is, for instance, two ears, one mouth. Two ears, one mouth. There's a reason that our creator gave us two ears and one mouth on a very practical level. Maybe we should listen more than we talk. And the reason that arguments happen and conflict goes unresolved is one, because that man or that woman are not listening to each other. And if you're not listening, you're not getting understanding, right? Tom, I believe that conversations should lead to comprehension. The more a couple can have conversation, the more that they can comprehend. And what's not happening, they're not listening, which means that they're not understanding, which means that they're not comprehending. Even if they are listening, saying, "Well, I'm listening," most couples are listening to respond versus listening to understand. Because if you can understand your partner's perspective, if you can understand your partner's pain, then it can lead to connection rather than disconnection. So that's just number one. And then, Tom, what's also happening, a basic, principle is validation. You know, when a person is sharing their pain, sharing their hurt, sharing whatever they're experiencing, it is so important to learn the skill of validating. Validation is very simple. It is to make valid what my partner is feeling in this moment. It is to make valid whatever their feelings are. Validation, Tom, is not necessarily fully agreeing with everything your partner's saying, but it's holding enough space where you can say, "You know what? I notice that you're angry. I want to validate your anger in this moment. Or, I notice that you're sad. I want to validate in this moment, I see your sadness. Or I notice in this moment that you are afraid. I want to acknowledge that I see fear right now." And when a person, Tom, feels validated, they feel understood. They feel appreciated. They start to feel this sense of safety rather than judged. So I think validation is very important. And then finally, Tom, what's happening with couples? Couples are not understanding the dynamic of facts versus feelings. One of the stories I shared when I was on with Simon is, imagine your partner is in a swimming pool and your partner is drowning in that swimming pool. They're having a hard time staying afloat. You come up to the pool and you see your partner drowning and you start spitting facts. Hey, you knew there wasn't a lifeguard on duty. Fact. You knew the pool closed at 5 o'clock. It's 7 o'clock. Why are we here? Facts. Right? You knew you couldn't swim in 8 feet. Facts. Facts are important. But what's most important right now in this moment is that your partner's drowning. So facts don't matter. And in conflict, a lot of time we're focusing on facts, and it's not the time to focus on that. You got to deal with how your partner is feeling. Facts matter, but feelings matter most. You got to do something about your partner drowning.
I watched that video and I thought that that drowning was such a great metaphor because we live so much of our time in our head and we don't get into
Yes.
that emotional level. I know I struggle with that because we're in the business of thinking all the time.
Hmm.
And do you think that's is that a guy thing that we spend more time on? I don't know. I don't want to go
It's a
the
guy
gender
thing,
route,
and
but
it's a
you know,
guy and a girl thing. It's a guy
uh,
and a girl thing. Yeah,
uh,
because facts, you're dealing with facts. Facts just sound good. Facts are true. Facts are accurate. But Tom,
rational.
they're rational,
Yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah, yeah,
logical.
yeah, yeah.
But in a relationship, what's more important is how does my partner feel? Tom, feelings matter. And in this world, men and women have been taught to suppress their feelings. Don't feel. And I believe if you can feel it, you can heal it. So let's not keep suppressing feelings. When I was a kid, I was taught to suppress feelings. My parents never said, hey, suppress your feelings. What they said is, hey, stop crying. Don't be sad. Hey, don't be afraid. And so I grew up with this mentality. I can't be sad. I can't be afraid. And really, the only emotion that was okay was to be angry, right? And so that's gotten out of control with a lot of people. And so I just think couples have to learn how to feel. And this is where you got to be patient. This is where you need to have understanding. And Tom, when a couple can feel, it makes the relationship safer. A person that is concerned about another person's feelings, that person that is hurt is going to open up a lot more. Tom, isn't that what leaders do? Isn't that what leaders do with their team and their staff? They have this level of understanding of their staff and their team, but they don't necessarily have that level of understanding when it comes to their own relationship with their partner.
So well said. You know, we did a study, and it's been about a year and a half ago where we did a lit search on what are the top most critical skills for the future in the leadership space, and empathy showed
Yeah.
up in the top first or
Oh,
second
yeah.
position because we don't have that capacity. It's I don't know what it is. I know empathy, the level of empathy from a social perspective has been declining, but we
Yeah.
lack that ability
We
to be able to
do.
connect at that level, which really
Yes.
requires a sense of emotions and understanding where somebody's
It
coming from.
does. In fact, Tom, I would go a step further. Well before we get to empathy, I think in a relationship, it doesn't start with empathy. It starts with compassion. Let's go back to the pool. Compassion says, I see you drowning. Compassion says, I notice that you are drowning. Once we get past compassion, we're still not at empathy. Sympathy comes out after compassion. Because if compassion says, I see you drowning, empathy says, I care about you drowning. Here's a life preserver. Here's a life vest. Empathy comes last because compassion says, I see you drowning. Sympathy says, I care about you drowning. But empathy says, I want to feel what you feel. And I'm going to risk my own safety and dive in the pool. so that I can experience what you're experiencing. Tom, it's easy to stand on the edge of the pool and spit facts versus showing empathy by diving in, because now you see drowning from your partner's perspective. Now you got the water in your lungs. Now you got the water going up your nostrils, right? And it's when we get to that place of empathy where you can feel and understand, we become less judgmental. It shows a great deal of care, and your partner feels like, man, you are embracing me now. You understand it not theoretically, you understand it because you're in the pool with me.
And you're not
Yeah,
trying to, because I've worked on this with my wife. I'm listening to,
yeah,
am I listening to fix it, or am I listening to
yeah,
just be there? And that's what you're talking
yeah,
about. And I like the way you've broken
yes,
up compassion as being, I
yes,
see you, I see where you're at in the struggle. Sympathy is, I
yes,
want is make sure I'm getting this right. Sympathy is around, I want to throw you a life preserver. I genuinely care
yeah,
about you.
yeah,
Empathy
yeah.
is, I'm gonna and really try to find out what it's like to be in that pool. It takes
That's
all, you
it.
cannot be judgmental if you're operating in
You
that
can't.
state. You
You
can't.
can't. Because it's risky, and it is risky. Diving in the pool is risky. But
True.
if but is your relationship worth it? And Tom, what I see happening is couples break up and they keep breaking up. Why? What's the root? There's a lack of compassion, there's a lack of sympathy, there's a lack of empathy. So if couples can just stay the course, if couples can work through the hard parts of staying present and giving your partner compassion, giving them sympathy, giving them empathy, typically things can turn around. And so I really encourage couples to persevere through the process. Growth takes time. Your partner's not the problem. The problem is the problem. Okay? The problem is the problem. So let's stop blaming your partner and let's start focusing on what the real problem is in the relationship.
So true. So this really is I'm hearing that, when you talk about communication as being sort of the number one that shows up, this is,
Yeah.
we're double clicking this, the
Yes.
compassion
Yes.
hyperlink, to say what's
Yeah.
really required of it. What is listening with double the emphasis, the two ears, one
Yeah.
mouth. We're talking about, you have to get that level of the emotional level to be able to truly
Absolutely.
listen and be present.
Yes. Tom, I use this little acronym LUVA. I call it LUVA with a U, LUVA. If we're going to resolve conflict in this relationship, we got to do the LUVA. You got to listen. Two ears, you got to listen. What is your partner saying? What is your partner communicating? Okay, you got to listen. And then after the listen, you got to understand. Tom, I have a question. I posted on TikTok about 2 years ago when I first got on TikTok, and I have almost 200,000 followers later on TikTok. I posted a question. I was sitting here in my office, and I said, here's how you understand your partner. You ask them the $1 million question. Here's the $1 million question. It can resolve conflict, it can bring peace, it can cause you both to lay down the swords. What do you want me to hear in this moment that I'm not hearing? You say to your partner, in this moment, what do you want me to understand that I'm not understanding? Tom, when couples ask that question, guess what it leads to? Understanding.
Yes.
What do you want me to get? Because in this moment, I'm not getting it. So I need you to break it down. I need you to make it clear. Tell me in layman's terms, what am I missing? What am I not hearing? And then after you get through the you get to the validation. You validate how they feel. And then the last piece, Tom, is the letter A. I use a couple of words for that last letter A. You make adjustments. I've listened to you. I've understood what you're saying. I validated what you're saying. And now I'm going to make adjustments. Show me, tell me, teach me, where can I adjust? Where does my behavior need to adjust? And the second A word I use is, of course, apologize. Apologize for where you have not adjusted. Apologize for where you haven't been hearing. Apologize for where you haven't understood. And that little acronym can just help couples work through it and solve it without hanging on to it, Tom, for days and weeks and months. Because I believe for leaders, if they don't work through that stuff with their partner, it affects productivity.
Absolutely. It shows up in weird, ugly ways oftentimes,
It does.
and we can
It
get away with
does.
a lot of communication in the business world. It's very heady. It's sharing, uh, communicating where we're going and the vision and the strategy, all that sort of things, and being direct on performance. But what we're talking about here is a much deeper depth to
Yes.
which what we're required to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Love
Tom, can
the
I tell you real
LUVA. Yeah, it's a great
LUVA?
acronym. I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Well, Tom, let's go deeper. Let me tell you why conflict goes unresolved. I'm gonna give you four F words. These are not curse words, by the way. I'm gonna give you
Okay.
four F words. When a couple is in the midst of conflict, typically each of them have what I call a trauma response. They are stuck in some kind of trauma response, some kind of uncomfortable response. I use four F words: fight, flight, freeze, fawn. In any conflict, one of those persons is the fighter, one of those persons is the flighter, one of those persons is the fawn, or one of those persons is freezing. Now, let me break it down this way. Imagine you're in the woods and you see a bear. You're going to respond to that bear one of four ways. Some people see the bear, they're going to fight the bear. They're going to fight. They're going to fight. I'm not dying today. This bear is not killing me. And they're going to fight tooth and nail to try to deal with the bear. Some people say, no, I'm not going to fight the bear. I'm going to take flight from the bear. I'm going to flee. I'm going to run. Now, if I'm in the woods, you better outrun me because, I'm not getting eaten. So some people take flight from the bear. Some people don't fight. Some people don't take flight. Tom, they freeze. They play dead. Maybe if I freeze and play dead, the bear won't eat me. And
Freezing
then
is that synonymous with disengaging or retreating?
shutting
Is that the
down,
same thing? Shutting
shutting
down,
down.
going numb,
uh,
all of
uh,
that.
Stonewalling is what Dr. Gottman calls stonewalling. Yeah,
Yes.
shutting down completely. And by the way, Tom, that shutting down may not be for an hour or two. That's shutting down. In fact, I had a client last year. He said, Shawn, my wife has shut down, and he gave me, it's been 6 months, 3 days, X amount of hours, and X amount of minutes.
Wow.
Okay, yeah. So that's how deep it goes sometimes. And then the last F word is fawn. I'm not going to fight the bear. I'm not going to flee from the bear. I'm not going to freeze and play dead. I'm going to fawn. I'm going to try to please the bear. I'm going to try to negotiate with the bear. Hey, can't we all just get along? Whatever I got to do to please you, Mr. Bear. And Tom, those responses, unfortunately, they don't work. They don't help to resolve. I give you another F word. They don't fix the conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't solve the problem. And I know leaders are very practical. Leaders want to solve problems. So how do we solve the problem of fight, flight, freeze, fawn? Here it is, Tom. We have to learn how to feel. Can you feel what your partner is feeling in this moment? Can you hold space? Your partner's angry. Can you hold space and try to understand what it's like for your partner to be angry? Your partner's sad. Tom, there are only four negative emotions. Whatever your partner is feeling on a negative scale, it's only one of four things or two or four things. Your partner's either angry, your partner's afraid, your partner's sad, or your partner feels shame. That's it on a negative scale. Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you afraid? Do you feel shame? And it's when we can feel those emotions, when we can
Yeah.
dive into those emotions, that's where we can get connected.
So, question for you on that. How I would guess that you have to become more competent at understanding and really being in tune with your own emotions before you can actually
Absolutely.
understand where your partner's emotions are. You've got to really
Yes.
work on that. So if that's
Yes.
not something that comes
Yes.
naturally or where you've had to suppress over the years or whatnot, it's going to be really hard
Yes.
for you to
It's
connect
going
with
to be
that
really
emotional
hard.
level, you know?
Such a good point, Tom, because I use another acronym. It just helps me to remember things. I believe that a couple should practice smart love. What is smart love? The S in smart speaks to what you just mentioned, self awareness. Before I can resolve anything with my partner, I have to be self aware. What am I feeling in this moment? What am I dealing with internally in this moment? Am I angry? Am I afraid? Am I sad? Do I feel shame? Every time I fly on an airplane, the pilot says the same thing. If anything goes down, put your own mask on first.
Good metaphor.
Don't start with your partner. Don't start with your neighbor. Put your own mask on first. That is self-awareness in smart love. And Tom, unfortunately, so many men and so many women and leaders who are in relationship, they're not self-aware. They don't know what they feel. Tom, I have this little thing in my office. It's a little chart, and I literally put this
The
chart
four
together.
emotions, are those
The
the
four
four
yeah,
emotions? Okay.
yeah, yeah. And
So
I,
it's
I
anger,
created this
it's
several
anger, fear,
anger, fear,
sadness.
sadness, shame. I
Okay.
created this because I would have men come in to see me, and and I'll say to the guy, "Hey, man, tell me what you're feeling." I don't know. Okay, what are you processing? I don't know. So for
Can't even
men,
imagine what you heard.
oh my good, I can't explain. So I said, okay. So I created. I said, here, okay, here. Tell me. And so under anger, I use word furious, enraged, irate, seething, upset, frustrated, annoyed, irritated, touchy. Give me one. Let's explore that. So I created
Yeah.
this literally because I had a heart. Women can do this pretty easily, okay?
Yeah.
Because women
Yeah.
are much more in tune with their feelings and
And
emotions.
conditioned. I think they're more
Yes,
conditioning. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. But so the S is self-awareness, right? The S is self-awareness in smart
This is
love.
this. What was the acronym again? It's SMART. Is that what it is?
Smart.
SMART.
Yes,
Okay. Yeah.
smart.
Yeah.
S
Okay.
M A R T. So the S is self-awareness. I got to be aware of what I'm feeling. The M in smart is here it is, Tom, managing your emotions. I'm aware of what I'm feeling. I have to manage it because, Tom, no leader, no man, no woman has the right to do anything they want to do with their emotions. Our
Yeah.
emotions must be managed. Our emotions must be brought under subjection. And Tom, what's happening in relationship, you have all of this chaos and all of this drama and all of this confusion because nobody knows how to manage their emotions. And this is where you get into verbal abuse, you get into emotional abuse, you get into physical abuse. It's an emotional management issues. So if you are a leader and you are in management, are you managing you?
Absolutely. That
That's a question for
self-regulation.
leaders.
It's kind of a EQ
Regulation.
competency we hit. Yep, yep, yep.
Absolutely. The
Yeah.
A in smart love, I use the word accountability. Tom, leaders must be held accountable. To become a better leader, how do leaders become better leaders? Because there's always someone in that leader's life that's holding that leader accountable. That's how we grow. It's like having a spotter when you're bench pressing. Somebody's there. And what I would say to leaders is, who is holding you accountable in your relationship? Do you have a close friend? Do you have another couple? Do you have a pastor? Do you have a counselor, therapist? Because accountability is crucial. We need people outside of us to look inside of us and challenge us and push us. So accountability is important. And then the
Yeah.
R in smart love is I use it to call it reading my partner's emotions with compassion, sympathy, and empathy. Can you read? Can you pay attention? You know, you often hear the term with leaders, a good leader can read the room. A good leader can walk in the room and he or she can read the room. Well, can you read your partner's emotions? And Tom, I think as a couple, couples have to become more curious about what they're reading. Former President Jimmy Carter passed away in January, and his wife passed away several years ago. He was married for well over 75 years.
5
And
years. Wow. Wow.
a journalist asked him several years ago in an interview, what's the secret to being married almost 80 years? And the president said these words, I'm still getting to know her. I'm still getting, what he's saying is, I'm still reading her. I'm still getting to know her highs, her lows, her ups, her downs, her emotions. President Carter, thank you for that revelation. Thank you for that understanding. Now, this is the president that didn't know how to use a smartphone, by the way, but he knew how to read his wife's emotions. But the last thing in smart love is T, is together, journey, we travel together in the land of understanding emotions. Tom, I, as a therapist, as a couples counselor, I am trying to create competent couples. If together we can go on this journey of appreciating emotions, understanding emotions, becoming, what's the guy that wrote the book, Goldman, emotional intelligence?
Yes. Yep.
Right? So
Yeah.
that's my little acronym. It's called SMART Love:
Love it.
self-awareness, managing emotions, accountability, reading my partner's emotions, and together we travel in the land of emotion. So
And I
hopefully
think
that's
that
helpful.
no, that is hugely helpful. And that last one, that you're growing together, you're on this
Together.
journey together. And I think that that is such a critical component. I know that I
So,
have
Tom,
experienced
isn't that
that,
how we started?
Yeah.
Isn't that how
Yeah.
couples start when they're just dating? Early on, there's this sense of togetherness, and we're connected, and we're getting to know each other, and we're exploring each other. But then over time, Tom, they start to go like that because they stop valuing togetherness and connectedness. Tom, this is not rocket science. I want to challenge leaders. Try to get connected, get reconnected with your partner. What were you, Tom? I have married in my career over 300 couples. And what's so fascinating to me when I do marriage counseling, one of the questions I ask a married couple is, tell me how often y'all are dating. If they've been married 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, don't matter. You're dating. Most married couples who I counsel, guess what they don't do anymore? They don't date. They don't date. And what I say is, this is what led you to get married in the first place. Y'all were having so much fun dating. You said, let's do this forever. You
Yes.
got married. And as soon as you get married, you stop doing the very thing that brought you together.
Yeah, that is
It's a
that is
phenomenon.
so well said. This is great stuff. It's this is really good practical. So you really are about teaching, helping people be more competent as it relates to their
Yes.
relationships, and we don't do that. That's why I was drawn to your messages and
Yeah.
how you approach this, is because it's really helping people. You're teaching as well as
Yes.
counseling and coaching and providing
Yes.
therapy. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and and Tom, because as leaders, we have to be intentional in our relationship.
Yeah.
Good leaders, and some of the leaders who are listening to this podcast, the reason they have had such success in the organization because they are very intentional of the organization. The same is true in relationship. You cannot have a successful relationship on autopilot. It doesn't work that way. We
Yeah.
have to be intentional about doing the things on a regular basis that's going to create some success and some good momentum in that relationship. And
Yeah.
leaders already know how to do it. It's just a matter of taking the medicine and applying the principles.
So true. When we first started out, and we don't have a lot of time yet, Sean, because we I got to get you to your next appointment.
I got one here in a
Yeah,
few
you got
minutes.
one coming
I have
up.
seven, I got five more couples to see today.
More. Okay. Wow.
Yes,
You got a
yes,
full afternoon. My gosh.
yes, sir.
You talked about the sort of infidelity and betrayal. I would guess
Yeah.
that that is a result of so much of what you're talking. This is like preemptive work that we're talking about.
Yes.
And
Yes.
um, what I mean, we can't go into that in great
Sure.
depth, but it was one of the top few
Yeah.
things that couples come to you.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
Tom. And just before I got on with you, I was with a couple virtually, been married 20 years, and she just discovered his infidelity. And it's one of the most difficult, sad, because but we call it betrayal trauma. It just causes so much. But Tom, it is preventable. I believe that men and women have very basic needs. And when those basic needs are being neglected, that man, that woman becomes vulnerable to go get those needs met elsewhere. Okay. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying this is what happens. Why do affairs happen? Because that man and that woman has a need that they can no longer get met in their primary relationship. So they go look for it elsewhere. And it starts very innocent. For instance, women have a need of for regular conversation. Women, the women I've counseled over 25 years who have been involved in infidelity, Tom, the number one reason why they went astray, it started with a conversation with another man. I believe a woman needs 2 hours a day of meaningful conversation. It's 14 hours a week. It's a part-time job. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so she has that need and she can't get it through her man because he's busy and he's building businesses and companies. And unfortunately, she gets it elsewhere. For that man, it's something different. He may not want conversation, but one of the needs that I see with men, he wants respect. He wants to be honored. He wants to be appreciated. He wants to be adored. He wants to be admired. And if he's not getting that in his primary relationship, guess what? He gets it at work. He has some woman that's stroking his ego and telling him how great of a leader he is, how great of a person, and he buys into that because he's
yeah.
starved. Okay, and so there's many different reasons, but I subscribe to the belief that when your basic emotional needs are not being met in your primary relationship, you are both vulnerable. You are both sitting ducks. And so we have to protect that. We have to protect that.
And it requires, we're talking about, 2 hours a day, whatever, in meaningful conversation, not just flip casual passing
Right.
through the hallways. We're talking about
Right.
deeper conversation. And through
Yes.
that work can help mitigate
Yes.
the tragedies and the trauma that results from
Absolutely.
fidelity and whatnot.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Um, this has been absolutely fantastic. Leadership is one of those jobs out there that we all talk about is hard to do. And yet, organizations, teams need
Yes.
it more than any time. I would extend that in this conversation and say our families, our partners need that as well.
Yes. They do.
And so
They
we need
do.
to be as intentional about those relationships as we are with the work that we do, um,
Yeah.
because they're so important. You know,
Tom, I really believe that good leadership should be measured at home first.
I agree with
It
you,
should be
Tom.
measured
Yeah,
at, because you can be so good publicly, but your home front, the people in your home front, your partner, maybe your kids feel dismissed, feel unheard. It's an alignment issue, right? And I believe that it is so important for a leader to be aligned at home. And if he or she can start there, it just makes their work so much more enjoyable, so much more sense of at peace, because they
yeah,
know that that their spouse, that their children, that their inner circle, the people that matter the most, they know he or she has not emotionally abandoned us for the sake of the people in this company.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think that, and I know we're just about out of time, but do you think that the work, because I have utmost respect and I think so highly of counseling and therapy. I've been doing it for years. I just think it helps navigate raising kids
Yes.
and
Yes.
relationships and dealing with traumatic events and whatever, grief,
Yes.
all those sort of things. I just think it's part of,
Yes.
and yet my sense is that there's still a stigma around it, but is that changing? I
Yeah.
think it is, but I'm not
I
with.
think it is. I think because of social media, technology has brought the world closer together. I mean, Tom, I have clients who are dealing with the same thing we're dealing with in America, in Australia, Germany. Just I was with a couple recently in the United Kingdom. I was with a lady yesterday in Dubai. I mean, yeah. So I think, Tom, fundamentally, leadership is not just about being in charge. How are you managing the people who are under your care? Under your care. And when we start to look at our team as a leader, I'm not just in charge, I got to care for these people. And care can look like encouraging counseling, encouraging therapy. Because, Tom, where do we process? Where do we process these emotions? Where do we process the vicissitudes of life? Where do we process grief and pain? And this is why I think counseling and therapy is so important. And it starts with the leader.
It
It's
does.
hard for
Yeah.
a leader to recommend counseling and therapy that he or she are not doing it for themselves. And so it's
Yeah.
a safe place to process. And I
Now,
encourage it.
I've always said that a leader can only take their constituents, their people up to where they are and beyond that,
Yeah.
unless they're doing their work, which is
Yep.
something that is so critical.
Yes.
One last question for you. Okay,
Yes.
so
Yes.
I'm out there. I'm a listener. Is there a one or two books that you would recommend that really need to be on our bookshelf with all the other leadership stuff that we've got up there?
My goodness. Oh
I
my
mean,
goodness.
I'm throwing this thing out. Anything out
Yeah.
that you would want to share with our listeners?
So I'm a couples guy. I do individual counseling and therapy for couples. I've been heavily influenced by a man named Dr. William Harley. Dr. William Harley. He's been counseling probably, shoot, 50, 60 years. And he's written several books. One of the most powerful books is called His Needs, Her Needs, how to affair-proof your marriage, how to affair-proof your relationship. So I highly, highly, highly recommend Dr. William Harley. And then if it doesn't sound self-serving, I've written 22 books. Just go to Amazon.com, type in Shawn McBride,
I'll
and you
come
can
up.
see they all come up.
I
So
was
that
seeing
if
if
that
you had a
sound,
book recommendation
yeah,
other than your
if that
books.
sounded like a commercial, it was. Yeah, it was. But no,
Yes.
one of my most best-selling books, I wrote a book for couples. It's a workbook, and it's on Amazon. It's called Communication Conflict Resolution for Couples. It's 10 weeks, and it's flying off the shelf because again, that's the number one and number two issue couples are dealing with. And they can find that on Amazon.com.
One last question. How do people get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you? Is it
Yes.
through your website or
Yep.
LinkedIn or what?
Couplescounselingcenter.org, couplescounselingcenter.org. You can go to that website. You can make an appointment. And you can also, Tom, I started something about a year ago and I have 400 subscribers. It's called Couples Growth School, SKOOL.com. Couples Growth School, SKOOL.com. We have 400 subscribers, and so I show up 5 days a week for an hour, just talking to couples, men and women about relationships, so they can find me there as well. Couples Growth School, SKOOL.com.
It's actually on the internet. They can go find it there.
Yes, they
Okay.
can. Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Shawn, this has been a blessing. Thank
Hey,
you so
thank
much.
you. Thank you.
God bless you
Hope to
and all the
see you
work that you're
soon.
doing out there.
Thank
Yeah.
you so
Take
much.
care.
Have a
Have a good week.
fantastic day.
All right. That is a wrap for this episode. A big, huge thank you goes out to Shawn for inspiring all of us to do this most important work. It's not easy. We know that. We know that from doing our leadership development work when we're trying to be a more effective communicator in the workplace, or how do we manage and resolve conflict. It's hard when we look at it from the work side. And then we take it home and look at it from the personal relationship side. It can even be more complicated and more complex. And yet, if we can become more competent in building healthy personal relationships, we can gain greater happiness, more fulfillment, more joy. And I know from personal experience, it helps me show up better in all aspects of my life when I'm taking care of the relationships that matter most to me. We covered a lot today. And so for a summary of our key takeaways, check out the show notes. Shawn mentioned several resources and books and websites, and so we've listed those in the show notes as well. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, we ask that you follow us on your favorite podcast platform, whether it be Apple, Spotify, iHeartMedia, whatever. And if you're so inclined, we would love to have you leave us a rating or give us a review, because your support does help others discover this podcast series. Until next time, my challenge to all of you is to lean into your personal relationships, become smarter at building skill sets and capabilities. Share some of the ideas and best practices with your spouse, your significant other, the person that you're dating, or other people in your lives, and be intentional rather than just putting the health of your personal relationships on autopilot. I know I learned a lot from Shawn and took a few notes and ideas and best practices, and I'm going to do my best to share those with my spouse of 35 years. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.